Where should we start?
Let's start. First of all, I just want to mention that the Mid-Atlantic accent for screen and voiceover has a lot of different usages. Like I know that you do a lot of narration and commercials and voiceover for companies where they really are looking for that sort of Mid-Atlantic accent that can be used all over the world and is understandable. Because I do a lot of video games, I tend to be asked to do a mid-Atlantic accent um, to give a video game, a fantasy video game, for example, a timeless feel. You know, a lot of the Blizzard games, the Lord of the Ring games, all those there often ask for a mid-Atlantic so that it's sort of out of time and space feel. So the Mid-Atlantic is really used in different genres for different reasons. You know, and there's business people who might lean towards that even in their companies, to in their presentations. So it's just sort of interesting to note that there's a lot of different uses and fields where this is used and addressed, and sometimes the qualities for that will be a little bit different as well. Um, so
What,
today we want,
yes, I was going to say,
yeah.
what fascinates me is how to create that accent in a way that doesn't feel artificial or phony. Because initially, of course, when it was created, it was to make Hollywood actors to sort of elevate them and make them sound, more posh, more cultured, whatever, more highbrow.
Really, really, I do. Really. Shall
Yeah.
we go to the pubs tonight? Of course, I would quite enjoy that. Yes, that would be wonderful. Let's do that. Yes, let's shall. That sort of thing, which is absolutely not natural, and nobody would talk like that today. But yes, they were trained in speaking like this to sound elegant and
And I
like
love
that.
the idea of helping people to actually find an accent from nowhere or
Mm.
from everywhere that is maybe a more truthful expression of who they are. Like a lot of people don't want to be stereotyped in a particular culture or nationality, but rather they want to live out something that is who they are on a deeper level through their accent. I know that was the case for me. I grew up in the UK. And the
Mm.
accent always seemed to me very well, that the piece of the Brits that's kind of imperialist and thinks that they rule the world still and that they're better than everyone and everything didn't sit well for me because it was very distancing or isolating or denying of other cultures. And so I think what happened is I naturally started to soften the edges of that British accent in order to find an accent that felt more true for me. And it was easy to lean into a bit of an American accent just because I was actually born there and my parents were American. So I grew up hearing that in my ears.
Susanna, I have a question. So the to my American ear, I always hear your accent as more British than I think that you hear it. Now, if you were to do an accent that was more British and less Mid-Atlantic, which is where you sit now, what would that sound like if you made it more British?
It would probably sound more like what's known as RP, received pronunciation, where it would be more clipped. It would also be, there would be more attention to enunciation. And in fact, it's interesting because I had a voice coach and she was always wanting me to muddy up my work and to be less that way. And I think she was American, and I think what she was objecting to was that very sort of precise way of speaking that a
Mhm.
well-spoken English person has.
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating. That's so cool. I get it. It's interesting too because I think um, I tend towards standard American. And when I do voiceover, I tend to sort of between standard American and mid-Atlantic. So right now, the way I'm speaking is a very, very clean American accent. You know, whereas I think if I'm hanging around with just American friends, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And, and I, would lean into more of a, this is sort of a more edgy American kind of thing, casual American. Whereas when I'm, reading a voiceover or copy, I'm going to clean it up, and it's going to lean not quite Mid-Atlantic, but sort of between Standard and Mid-Atlantic, where it's just really clean. And then if I would go to Mid-Atlantic, I'd round my sounds just a little bit more and, probably open up the sounds just a little bit more and have just a little bit more diction to
And
transition from my American to Mid-Atlantic. I'd add just a little bit more diction.
And would you place the accent in a different place in your mouth? I know when you teach, you often do that, don't you? You discover where the accent tends to sit.
So when I'm doing British, it's really placed much more on the roof of the mouth, right? Standard American is really placed much more down in the lower jaw. So as I speak American, I let it fall more into the lower jaw. So if I'm doing Mid-Atlantic, I'm sort of raising my voice a little bit more to sit more up on the upper palate up here.
Mm.
So it has that sort of, it leans more in the placement of where British is, much more up here, as opposed to Standard, which would kind of drops more down here. So yeah, I would do that. But then I wouldn't do that clipped thing that you find in British, where it really leans to the roof of the mouth and it's got that, like you say, that really tighter and clipped sort of thing. So I'd sort of soften the edges of that, but keep it more up here.
Yeah, no,
That would make sense.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Do you want to try a piece of copy?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump in at paragraph 3. And I want to say that for me, the Mid-Atlantic accent is a sliding scale. Like there's mostly American on the one end, and then there's mostly British on the other. So let's just see what comes out. Before long, that itchy goose began to strut around the office like a lunatic, which made an unsanitary mess. The goose's owner, Miss Mary Harrison, kept calling, comma, which Sarah thought was an odd choice for a name. Comma was strong and huge, so it would take some force to trap her. But Sarah had a different idea. First, she tried gently stroking the goose's lower back with her palm, then singing a tune to her. Finally, she administered ether. So, to your ear,
Yes, I
how
could
did
listen to you. I could just listen to you all day long.
that?
Mm.
So, to your ear, did that sound? Where would you put that on the spectrum?
God, it sounded perfectly in the middle. It
In the
sounded
middle.
beautiful.
Cool.
And it sounded neutral. It sounded not at all pretentious. It sounded completely natural, but it sounded in the middle. It sounded, I'm not trying to over compliment you here, but it sounded like the perfect Mid-Atlantic accent to me. It was just beautiful.
Well,
Just
amen.
elegant, sophisticated without feeling
And what I
pretentious.
noticed was, like, as I was speaking, you're always listening to yourself, of course. I mean, as a voice actor, we do. But then there was a word that shocked me, which was I chose to say the word tune. So I said it in the
I heard,
American way, right?
and I heard you do
I was
that.
like,
And
ooh.
my
And if
grandson
I were to do it
knowing
again, I might say tune instead. So and then I think, unsanitary or unsanitary would be more British. So there are some words that you can play around with. The beauty of this accent is, and you and I have talked about this before, that there's no right or wrong way to do it. And so, like anyone that wants to do it, I just want to free them up to live into a space where they just play and have fun and listen and explore. Do you want to read the same paragraph?
Yeah, with
And
my coming from American
yeah,
Mid-Atlantic.
yeah.
See what happens. Okay. Before long, that itchy goose began to strut around the office like a lunatic, which made an unsanitary mess. The goose's owner, Mary Harrison, kept calling, comma, comma, which Sarah thought was an odd choice for a name. Comma was strong and huge, so it would take some force to trap her. But Sarah had a different idea. First, she tried gently stroking the goose's lower back with her palm and singing a tune to her. Finally, she administered ether.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And I'd love to hear you do it again. You know, Karen, you're the person that I turn to as a coach when I have to prepare an on-camera audition or something, because you just have such an amazing ability to tune somebody into the moment, into being fully present, into being really authentic. And I thought accent-wise, that was beautiful. I'd love to hear you do it. And I know this isn't a piece of acting copy, it's just prose, but I'd love to hear you do it, keeping that accent, but pulled back slightly so that it's less projected and more as if you were reading a script, as if you were acting a script, just for the fun of it.
Before long, that itchy goose began to strut around the office like a lunatic, which made an unsanitary mess. The goose's owner, Mary Harrison, kept calling, comma, comma, which Sarah thought was an odd choice for a name. Comma was strong and huge, so it would take some force to trap her. But Sarah had a different idea. First, she tried gently stroking the goose's lower back with her palm, and then singing a tune to her. Finally, she administered ether.
Yeah, nice. And just say for me which Sarah thought was an odd choice.
Which Sarah thought was an odd choice.
Yeah, nice, nice. I guess I was a little shocked by the odd, which is, more of the American vowel sound. And
Yeah,
that
I did it out that way a little bit more American as I got more authentic, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, naturally. Yeah, very cool.
And then what I would say too is if it was a video game, again, we're changing genre here. So the first one I did more as a gentle narration,
Hmm.
right? Second one I did more as a real person, bringing a little personality to it and
Yeah.
my point of view to it and my experience. Like I'm experiencing this. And this third choice, it would be, for example, from a fantasy video game, perhaps a goddess or a queen or, a high elf. And so it might sound something like this. Before long, that itchy goose began to strut around the office like a lunatic, which made an unsanitary mess. The goose's owner, Mary Harrison, kept calling comma, comma, which Sarah thought was an odd choice for a name. Comma was strong and huge, so it would take some force to trap her. But Sarah had a different idea. First, she tried gently stroking the goose's lower back with her palm, then singing a tune to her. Finally, she administered ether.
Yes, yes,
That would be sort of a Lord of the Rings type
yes.
mid-Atlantic,
Which is
you
often
know,
asked for, isn't it? That
timeless
Kate
and
Blanchett
so.
thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope this has been helpful. And whether you're moving from the American towards the British or the British towards the American, just giving you an idea of the placement within the mouth of the two accents. And like Karen said, the American, for those of us with a British base, is more in the lower jaw and more relaxed. And a lot of people, I know when I was working one time on an American accent with you, I had the idea that it was up in the nasal, like American kind of sounded like this. And
A lot of British people
you
do that.
showed
Yeah.
me that you could just do it in a very soft, relaxed way, and even like that, to place it in the chest, which was fascinating. So yeah, I look forward to talking more with you about, or bringing authenticity through with accents, and maybe even with a global accent in our next episode.
This is fun.
See you next time.